I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rakakwadash. Double honors unto our apostle elders, which rule Great Millstone Well and Shalom, to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, Wa Abba Babal. All right, so I'm going to declare the Copyright Act, Section 107, which gives me the right to use copyright material to edify my people, the Israelites, in the accuracy of the Bible.
And of course, this is exactly what Israel wants. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the point has been made very well by a number of great thinkers over the past few weeks that this is part of the plan, that the United States is really the governor to Israel. Like, if you want to have the Greater Israel Project fully realized in the region, you need the United States out of the way. And what better way to get the United States out of the way than to completely economically ruin our country through some sort of massive
and then that gets us
boondoggle.
into the nuclear prospect, because the Israelis I've spoken to,
and the nuclear prospect is what he's talking about, is the war, World War III, going nuclear, which this man, he tells you that we are in World War III because you got the major players active.
I have a lot of contacts in Israel. I used to have a lot of contacts in Israel. The Israelis I've spoken to believe that the U.S. will try to land troops and it will fail. And at that point is when they're talking about, well, we're going to need to introduce nuclear weapons because the Americans aren't going to go to that next level. They don't have it in them. Trump's already looking, talking like he's getting, cold feet. So this is how they're going to keep us engaged, is they're going to do something with nukes. And that's where this leads, I think. And I think the idea, as you note, is to flatten all of their potential rivals. I mean, they're already starting to pick fights with NATO member Turkey. You're going to see they're going to try to flatten all of their Arab and Iranian rivals as a means to allow for chaos to reign around their border, thinking that will then allow them to create hegemony. But I really got to tell you, I think if this keeps going, I think that you're also going to witness the collapse of Israel. This is a very dangerous moment for them. There's plenty of Israelis who know what I'm talking about. This is not a good spot. And I keep hoping that those IDF generals and those Israelis who are opposed to Netanyahu summon the courage to start telling him no. But so far, they have not. And that's the problem here, because the temple is being taken down around their heads in real time by their own leader, who is not restrained by anyone, including the United States. And the Israelis do not have the juice, the power to actually accomplish these very ambitious goals. So you're witnessing not only the destruction of American military power in the region and the destruction of America's economic hegemony for forever, but you're also witnessing the self-destruction of Israel as a nation state, and that,
which is biblical. All right, it says the least of the flock would draw them out into the World War III. All right, but eventually it leads to the demise of all the Edomites, whether it's the counterfeits in the Promised Land or the Edomites in America. So Obadiah, which is 1 chapter, verse 1, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith Yahweh's power concerning Edom. Edom is the biblical name of the so-called white race, which means red, for they are not white, but the red devil the Bible speaks of. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen, which was the Egyptian president, that said that they left black and came back white. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. So they fought against the so-called Israeli state. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, which the so-called white race, starting with those Amalekites in the Promised Land, the counterfeit tiny tops, big-nosed bastards. All right, they are the minority and not the majority. Thou art greatly despised. And as you can see, they're despised around the world, the so-called white race. They even have names for the small hat, big nose counterfeits that are in the promised land, they call them little Satan. And they call America, the great whore, Babylon the Great, big Satan. All right, so the Edomites are greatly despised. Verse 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwelleth in the cliffs of the rock, which they're called Caucasians, because these were the Neanderthals in the bottomless pit of Europe, whose habitation is high, which they live high on the hog, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? All right, which they build these towers like Trump towers because of their pride, which they say, who shall bring me down to the ground? Who's going to stop us, right? It says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, look at the great seal of America, which Rome did also, and the Greeks. And though thou set thy nest among the stars, the eagle has landed, also the Space Force. Thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. All right, so Yahweh is going to bring these Edomites down. All right, it says, verse 10, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, for what they're doing to the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans, which we've been scattered throughout the world in slavery. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. So cut off forever means no mercy, and eventually you will be made extinct after 1,000 years of slavery. All right. So I'm going to go back to the
of Israel as a nation state. And that's, tragic within itself, in my opinion. And so I hope that they can avoid this and they actually start listening to reason. But so far, I don't see anything indicating that.
Now, what are the pieces that would fall if Israel does use a nuclear weapon on Iran? Iran has said Pakistan will retaliate on their behalf. We don't know if that's true or not. What do you think of that? And what would be the fallout for Israel as well?
Well, I don't know if Pakistan would. I think that's a lot of bluster because you have to understand, it was 12 months ago, Pakistan and Iran were at war with each other. Also, Pakistan is basically a partner with Saudi Arabia, and the Pakistanis do not. I don't think they would. I don't think the Pakistanis would go to nuclear war with Israel, maybe, but I don't think they would. I think that's a very low probability. What is more probable is whatever nuclear, and we know Iran was developing nukes. This is, I'm not naive, and I've got a whole book out talking about the actual threat Iran posed. And so there's no doubt that Iran has.
Which prophesies they're going to fight against these Edomites in 2nd Ezra 15, verse 28, behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, and all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians are the Iranians raging in wrath. It says, shall go forth as wild boars of the wood, which wild boars is that are living in the forest, they're deadly. All right. So that's how they're going to be coming out, deadly towards these Edomites. And with great power shall they come and join, it says, and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians, which the Assyrians is talking about the Americans. All right. It's not talking about the Assyrians that were ruling Babylon before this prophecy. Remember, the Assyrians lost Babylon to the Medes and then the Persians, which the Persians are the Iranians today. So it's talking about these modern times, these Iranians, the Carmenians, are going to lead deadly events against the Assyrians, aka Americans, all right, which is prophesied. I just read the prophecy for you.
Actual threat Iran posed. And so there's no doubt that Iran has the capability to build rudimentary nuclear devices, whether a dirty bomb or low yield system, whatever. They've had that capability for a while now. And it seems to me, as I noted earlier, contrary to what we all thought, the Iranians are not crazy. They have been very, very responsible in the escalation. Like I said, they counterpunch. They don't escalate on their own. They only do the exact same thing that we do when we first do it, then they retaliate. So if it
And it says the wicked shall get exactly what they deserve, and the wicked is the so-called white race, all right, which they oppress the people constantly. It says in Isaiah 3, verse 11, woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. All right, so they're going to get exactly what they deserve. Let me get NLT. It says, but the wicked are doomed, for they will get exactly what they deserve. Right? It says, whatever you sow, you shall reap.
If a nuclear weapon or device were used by Israel after an American landing failed, I could foresee Hezbollah or Hamas having access to some dirty bomb material and say, okay, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. This is our Samson option. We're going to blow up Tel Aviv and Jerusalem or Haifa or, whatever. But this is where it's headed. And it's, Herman Kahn once referred to this sort of thing as an insensate wargasm. And I think that's exactly what we're witnessing here. The escalation ladder always leads to insensate wargasm, in which both parties destroy each other with nukes.
Yeah, I mean, here, let's put this up. Here's the escalation ladder.
There you go.
Which that's what's going to happen. World War III is going to be a nuclear war, and the ones that lose it is the great whore, America, all right, which rides the beast, which their allies is going to turn its back on the whore and eat it with fire, which is prophesied in Revelation 17, America being the whore. And then it says, verse 16, and the 10 horns, which is the European Union, which together with America they have NATO, which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns, which are the kings of the European Union, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. The whore is America that rides the beast, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, with nuclear missiles. It says in Revelation 17, verse 16, NLT, it says, the scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute, which is America. They will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire, which is those nuclear missiles.
The escalation ladder.
There you go.
Diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, covert operations. We saw all of these things unfolding. Remember the Starlink, CIA operations, Mossad operations in Iran, limited military action, 12-day war, right? Regional conflict, then you have full-scale war. And then that's where you go, is to a nuclear war, unless, cooler heads can prevail.
And you could make the case, and I have in other shows, I think I did on Tucker's show too, they're calling this a regional war, and that's fine. I think this is World War III because it's already...
And did you hear him? He said this is World War III in his mind, which he's, I believe, an ex-senator, all right? But I'll look it up in this video and I'll show you. But as you just heard him, he said he believes this is World War III. And this is the part I wanted, because he's going to tell you why, and it's because all the major players are making their posture in a war state.
Fine, I think this is World War III because it's already roped in the great powers from outside the region, right? I mean, you
see, so the great powers, he's talking about the beasts, Europe being France, Great Britain, Germany, right? Which you got Germania Major, Germania Minor, Rome, and then which Rome was wounded with the sword, but it was healed by America's existence, which America's involved, and then Greece, which all these major players are going to be pulled in, as well as the BRIC nations, all right, and you're going to have World War III. And it tells you in Revelation 11, it says, verse 14, it says, the second woe is past, the second world war is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right, let's go to Revelation 9, which this is history about World War I, but it shows you that it says, verse 11, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, which was Kaiser. Let me pull it up.
Second is considered a key figure in starting World War I because of his aggressive policies and naval expansion. His blank check to Austria-Hungary in 1914 directly encouraged the conflict, and his pursuit of a global empire also antagonized other European countries.
All right, so Kaiser Wilhelm II. All right, he was the key promoter of World War I, which he is that angel of the bottomless pit. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue had his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter, which the third woe is talked about in these rest of these scriptures, which is going to be brought on by the king of Babylon. All right, Nero 47 is leading the charge as the demon king, right, of Babylon, which he's inaugurated, possessed by spirits, and he's going to lead America, which he's already doing, into World War III, and then eventually perdition by nuclear missiles shot by his allies and enemies. NATO nations, UN nations, which are their allies, which are going to become their enemies, and the BRIC nations. All right, so I want a little more of this, but Copyright Act, Section 107, which gives me the right to use copyright material for edification, which I'm edifying the Israelites, my people, about the biblical accuracy in our generation through prophecy. Shalom to the elect.
Turns out the government...
Not only is China and Russia having a lot of influence over Iran, but you have also Britain is now, and they were opposed to this, interestingly enough. Britain is being dragged in against their will. They have these defense agreements with places like Qatar. So F-35Bs belonging to Britain are being used in a copious air defense role. They're staying in Qatar.
All right, so I pulled that man up, Brendan Wickhart. All right, so it says contributor, freelance, defense and national security reporter, the national interests in the United States, energy, military, opinion, and editorial, political U.S. It says, let's see, I know he's wrote some books, but it says here, Brendan J. Wickhart is a geopolitical analyst who serves as a consultant for various private and academic organizations. He also works as an occasional subject matter expert for the United States military. Wickhart is the senior national security editor at the National Interest and senior fellow at the Center for the National Interest. Recently, Wickhart joined Popular Mechanics as a contributor. He has been described as a panic and anxiety-inducing scholar who tells us that which we may not want to hear but must know. His writings have appeared in several international publications, including the Washington Times, the Asia Times, the New York Post, MSN, and Yahoo News. Wickhart previously served as a senior contributor at American Greatness and the American Spectator. He was a senior editor at 1945.com. All right, so he also wrote books. He's done a lot, all right? But that just shows, he knows what he's talking about, this guy. All right? So I wanted to get that information so you could see that.
Here's the secret trick. Role. They're staying in Qatari airspace, but they're shooting down incoming, doing their best to shoot down incoming Iranian missiles and drones. You see the French now are getting involved. They lost their only naval base in the region, and they are now deploying the aging Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier. You're seeing the world now becoming ensnared, not just economically, but actually militarily as well. There's also, by the way, a possibility here. It's not being well spoken about. The Houthis in Yemen have kept their powder dry. I think that's purposeful. They're an extension of Iranian power, after all, but they haven't really done much this time around to help the Iranians, and I think that's because the Iranians are keeping them in reserve. If this thing really goes south, the Iranians could use the Houthis to blockade the only avenue right now through which oil is getting out of the region, and that's the Red Sea. They did it 2 years ago, and we lost to them. Remember, the Trump administration, or a year ago, Trump administration pulled out and didn't look back rather than risk the aircraft carriers. This could spread not only to that part of the Middle East, but this could spread to the Horn of Africa, which is right across.
And see, in the second Ezra 15, it talks about the Arabs. Arab means mixed, a mixed people. All right, so the Ishmaelites, the Hamites, all right, all these different nations that are in the so-called Middle East are going to get active with the Carmanians. But I was pointing out verse 29, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots. You consider the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, but Arabia literally means a mixed people. See, I put Arab meaning, and Arab is a member of a Semitic, which the Ishmaelites go back to Shem, all right, just like the Israelites and the Edomites, all right. It says people originating from the Arabian Peninsula, now primarily residing across Western Asia and North Africa. Defined by shared language, Arabic, culture, and history, they are not defined by religion, as many Arabs are not Muslim. All right, so it's a mix of people. All right, it says ethnic, cultural identity, a person belonging to an Arabic-speaking culturally cohesive group spanning nations like Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, which the Houthis are in Yemen. See, so it's a mixed people. All right, it's not just one race, being the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, but it's a mix of those nations in the so-called Middle East.
from Yemen, where the Red Sea begins to, have the gates of the Red Sea. That's because the Ethiopians are aligned with the U.S., the UAE, and the Israelis, and they've been making burblings recently that they're interested in possibly sending their troops to neighboring Eritrea to take operational control over the coastline of Eritrea so that the Americans and Israelis can establish land-based missiles in the Eritrean coastline to begin targeting the Houthis more thoroughly because our Navy ships can't get close enough without risking themselves. So you have this thing, we're probably weeks away from this thing really ripping open into a real nightmare that we're not going to be able to get out of.
And see, that was the point I wanted to end on. He said it's only going to be weeks until things really get messy, where you're going to start noticing things, which could possibly be a draft, right? Gas prices increasing, shortages on products, right? So all these things are going to intensify within weeks, all right? And especially, knowing that we have our Passover, which we remember, what the Lord did for us at the time of the Passover when he was sacrificed, died and resurrected after 3 days, right? Which he sits at the right hand of the Father, which we were waiting for him to return. Also remembering what the Father Yahweh and his Son Yahushua did for us, the Israelites, in bringing us out of Egypt, talking about ancient Egypt, when we first got the Passover. All right, so when Passover happens, it gets intense on the earth, especially now in these last days. All right, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse before it gets better.
Brandon, I know you got to run. I want to get you out of here on a timely fashion, but I just want to play this video. Iran released, so they've been releasing some video memes. You know how CENTCOM has been releasing some memes making fun of, whatever on the American side. Well, Iran has now released a video. They say this is the best way for us to explain to Trump what's happening. And we're releasing this cartoon. I removed the Batman music that was associated with this for copyright purposes, but you can see here Iran is explaining what's going to happen, right? Yeah. We can just talk over this. Already happening. Yeah. We're well past this stage, which is oil prices going up, going up, going up. He's stopped the flow. Iran has stopped the flow. And if they try to make it through, they're going to be hit with Iranian drones or other strikes. President Trump then gets mad. Here comes the USS Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. And, you explain what we're seeing here.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Navy has already told Trump, and I'm surprised because it sounds almost like he was giving an order. But the Navy has already told Trump we're not sending any large ships through the strait. It's not happening.
Which it says there'd be sedition amongst men. All right, which is already happening. On 2nd Ezra 15, and it is about 16, it says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." Which they just sent ice to the airports, the ice cubes and iced teas. It says, "A man shall desire to go into the city and shall not be able." Martial law. "For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be afraid, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid." See, so we're about to go into a great tribulation because the so-called white race, they're going to come down with great wrath knowing that they have but a short time. And the Edomites were given the technology of the microchip, the implantable microchip, which is the mark of the beast, which prophecy says that they're going to make mandatory for buying and selling worldwide before the nuclear destruction of the great whore, Babylon the Great. Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. Wa abba babal.